Well, hello. Well, hello.
Well, hello.
Well, well, hello. Well, hello. Well, hello, Mike Manley. How are you, sir?
Ground. I'm ground this week.
It's a
Grinding.
it's a rough week this week. I feel like I haven't talked to you since the last podcast, Mike, and that's unlike us. We talk all the time.
I think we only briefly texted because
Hmm.
you hate me.
It's the gig is up. Um, yeah, it's. I was saying to somebody in my neighborhood, I'm starting to only realize what day it is because I have to take the trash out again. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's trash day again. It's trash day
Oh, the
again.
worst thing is to go.
Hmm.
It's trash day. Okay, I'll come back. I'll take that trash out. You don't come back, and then it's like it's night. You're like, oh fuck.
Night trash.
I got a night trash. It's cold. It's cold, and I got a night trash. I got to go out. All right, all right. I'll get up early. I'll get up early and take the trash out before
Don't
they
do
get.
it.
And then what do you hear?
Don't.
Oh, oh, where's my shoe? What? Oh, you're like all stiff, like Walking Dead going out, like you just rose out of the grave. You go out. I'm sure they see 100 people all coming out, sleep face, all, dragging their can over.
Sleep
You
face
know,
killer.
sleep. Yeah, it's like wow, just something so simple, and you realize that normal people, they come home at 5 o'clock and the wife goes, "Take off the trash, worm." Yes, dear. And he
Yes,
goes,
yes, dear.
takes the trash out. Cartoonist, it's always like, what did? Oh, yeah, right. Running. Luckily, because I'm on the corner,
Mm-hmm.
I can either put it out on my drive, which
Mm-hmm.
is where they normally get it,
Mm-hmm.
or I can hightail it to the corner and put it out on the corner.
Oh,
And
there's corner pickup, or you put it on your neighbor's your
well,
neighbor's
see,
truck.
since I'm on the corner, right? I'm on the
Yeah.
corner. I can put it with my neighbor next to my neighbors, so they would take it, or I can put it
Mm-hmm.
next to Chuck right here,
Yeah.
and they could take it. So
Mm-hmm.
I have two opportunities.
I love it. Do you have trash rules in your neighborhood? Kind of like I don't know
Like
if your
what? No
neighbor.
body's got to be cut up.
Yeah, you have to roll it counterclockwise in a
No
carpet.
chipped bodies.
That's right. No, we have a lot of dogs in my neighborhood, and everybody's really good with picking up crap. But like if somebody walked by and put a dog bag in your trash, would that bother you, or do you not care?
No, because there's dog bags in my trash all the time.
Hmm.
So
That
would you rather have someone pick up Fido's poop with a bag and put it in your garbage can, or let him deposit
just
his Lincoln logs all over your lawn so you step on it when you go out to put your trash?
right. That's I know in some neighborhoods that causes like Hatfield and McCoy level feuds with the neighbors. Like, don't put your trash in my trash can.
No,
Yeah,
no, no.
no.
We probably have Hatfield and McCoys over other things like your leaves are going in my yard.
Yeah,
Your dog barks too much. I mean, I don't have dogs anymore, but
yeah.
there's the when my old neighbor uh, was convinced. I think she was starting to go insane, and she was convinced that I was running a meth lab, right?
Well,
Because she
you
was
were.
like, right. Well, I mean, come on, comics don't pay enough.
I know,
Um,
right? Right.
uh, and so she kept calling the township on me. Inspector come over. Hi, Mr. Manley, do you mind if I come in? Come in and they look around. Okay, fine. He leave. Right.
What
And
was
he
he
would
looking
say,
for?
it's like she was convinced. She kept smelling things.
Oh, right.
I think she had a brain tumor. Personally, I think there's something wrong. Anyway, because she had me over to her house and like, didn't you smell that smell? And I'm like, no, I don't smell that smell.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're a man. You can't smell anything. Yet, of course, she's a smoker, right? But I couldn't smell anything.
You're a man. You can't smell anything.
Right. So when the township inspector came over, and the second time he came over, he brought a friend. Mm-hmm. So you said, we can bury this. We'll have two people come in and say, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. He told me that the amount of what you said, Hatfield and McCoy's going on in Upper Darby and Springfield is just like insane. You know, people getting papers and realizing, oh, your fence is 2 inches on my property. That will not stand, you know.
Yeah.
Go get a variance. And he says, you know, their day basically is like dealing with.
Yeah, the crackpots in the neighborhood, right?
Right, yeah. You know, I can imagine it must only be worse with the pandemic.
Yeah, it's probably tripled. But, you know, also like thinking about if you lived in an area that has like, say if you lived in a gated community and you have an HOA or a housing, you know, overlord where they get on you if your grass is too high or if you left your trash cans out like too early the day before the trash comes out, you get written up for things like that. That's just a lot, you know.
Is it that lady like in Harry Potter that was like the bad chick that got chased away by the spiders or whatever? You know, I forget what her name was.
Yeah, it's like you get house demerits. You know, it's like 500 demerits for House Manley. You left your leaves have been out for long.
I'm sure I would be nothing but demerits.
But I don't know how that works. Like, if you get too many, I think, do they raise your mortgage or do they could kick you out? That's rough, bro.
I think it probably, yeah, they probably could fine you, I would imagine, or you wouldn't get your deposit back. I know I had a friend of mine lived in one of those places. And like a lot of people, when you do your laundry, you do your sheets or whatever, you don't want to dry them, you put them outside. Oh, no.
Oh, you can't hang them out on
the line. No laundry can be hung outside of your house because that's like too ghetto. You know, we don't want to see your skid marks flying. Sorry, lady.
Oh no. JRD says, shout out to the notorious JRD. One of our neighbors goes through trash if anyone leaves theirs out too early on trash day. Yeah, like that's a thing. Like if you say if your trash day is on Wednesday and Tuesday everybody puts their trash out. If it's too early on Tuesday, that's a problem. It has to be like
they're welcome to go through my kitty litter, and there ain't nothing surprising in my trash. So they're welcome to. They're welcome to dig through, you know, eat some old cheese or something, you know, like a mouse, you know.
Well, let's get this show on the road, everybody. Well, hello, welcome back to the Pencil to Pencil podcast. As you know, this is your favorite pandemic podcast.
Soon to not be pandemic, just be a podcast. We can hope, right?
We'll see. I don't know. Produced and co-hosted by your boy right here, Jamar Nicholas, Philadelphia's favorite son, and Johnny Carson, Mike Manley. Mike, you don't like my nicknames, do you? You always roll your eyes every time I do these.
Johnny Carson.
I'm trying to keep it lively. You know what I'm saying? I've got to put some spice on this. Also,
and his friend, were you like John Sinatra and John Martin and Jerry John. Or John Lewis.
That's a bit on the nose, but yeah. No, it's got. Well, do you? We kind of run John into the ground, but do you remember when there was some guy went on a shooting spree or something in Philly, and on Twitter,
which one?
Which time? And the Philly Twitter started calling him John Wick.
Oh, right.
See, it's got to connect, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that's when those guys were downtown near Temple, and they had all those high-powered weapons and were shooting it out with the cops. Remember?
Yeah, I called him John Wick. See, that's funny. It's not funny, but then it's funny again.
It's not funny if you catch one in the chest.
No, I'm not trying to catch two.
Who is it? Who did it to you? John Wick.
John Wick. Also, I'm joined by the proverbial hip by my best bud and Master of Comic Books, Mike Manley. Say hi, Mike. I know it's gonna rage. Mr. Alliteration, Mike Manley. Yo, it was crazy last week when we had Mike Manley, Brett Blevins, and Art Adams on the show.
We're all like Stan Lee characters, like Bruce Banner, Reed Richards.
Oh, do your Stan voice? I love it.
I was created by Stan Lee.
I love it.
Hi, heroes.
Face front, true believers. Welcome to the podcast. What this is, myself, Mike Manley, and sometimes our third best bud, Brett Blevins, show up here every week at 9 p.m. EST to talk that good talk with you guys, dear viewers. Sometimes we have on some of our creative guests from the art industry in some stripe, be it comics, illustration, animation, film. We've run the gamut. We've had all types of
puppetry.
Yeah, all types of stuff. And then sometimes we take a breather. We used to call them palate cleansers back when we first started doing the live podcast. Remember that, Mike?
Mentos.
The palate cleaner. But we have kind of rebranded our palate cleansers as, you ready? Bootcamp. I didn't even say it. I love it. Yo, I'm hyped. I'm hyped for Bootcamp. But before we bring that in, hold on, I lost my graphics. Let's give a shout out to our sponsors, our good buddies at Graphicsly. See the John up there? See, I did it again. Graphicsly is produced by Graphicsly are the people that produce Clip Studio Paint, our number one sponsor. And also a shout out to our buddy John Morrow, who is the publisher at Two Morrow's Publishing. And yes, JRD, you are correct. There is a half off sale at Tomorrow's right now. We can get, oh shit, I messed that up. At Clip Studio, you can get
half off. So what is it, like $5 now? I mean, it's already pretty cheap.
Well, hold on. So there's Clip Studio Pro, which is pretty cheap, and Clip Studio EX, which is not as cheap as you think it is. EX. So I'm not sure, JRD, which one of those is on sale.
So what's an EX? Is that with the figures and the...
Well, EX is the one where you can create stories. So rather in Pro, where you can only do one page at a time, you can build a file in EX and say, lay out, a 50-page comic book in one file. So it's kind of like, like an individual canvas in Pro and then stories in EX. That's probably the biggest difference between the two.
What is the biggest difference, Jamar?
Well, I mean, if you're just starting out, or maybe even more in particular, if you're an illustrator and you just do, singular illustration images, then maybe Pro's the way to go. But if you're doing comic work, or you want to do like a longer form story, check out EX. You can't go wrong either way. So we got some people in the room, Mike, that want to say things. Like our good buddy Will Rosado. What up, Will?
Hey, Will.
Will says the Art Adams interview was great. Well, thank you, friend.
Well, thank you. We'll have to have Will back on. We had Will as a man on the street interview way back in the beginning.
Yeah,
we interviewed him live, or we interviewed him. Well, you had some kind of recorder. We interviewed him at Baltimore Con.
I had my Lois Lane rig at the Baltimore Comic Con, and we did a what I call the pencil shaving, Mike, a little pencil to pencil.
Oh, right. I was saying, why Jamar interviews Will. This is a job for Superman.
That's right. But yeah, Will's an exciting, fantastic cartoonist and friend. And also, we get to share our love of GI Joe. And if you know your business, that Will is one of the accomplished GI Joe artists. So we get to talk about Joe's.
Do you guys trade Joes?
No, we were. I don't know. I don't know if Will still collects them, but we
I'll
talked about
trade
this
you two Snake Eyes for one
torpedo.
other one. What was that guy who's called like Laptop or Sideburn or whatever his name was? What?
I love
Ray-Ban.
Ray-Ban. Sunglasses. Sunglasses specialist.
That's right. Garbage can. Get over here.
Oh, when we doing this on the podcast, we had a new guy named Latrine, who's the Outhouse. That was his name.
Outhouse.
He's a latrine specialist. Outhouse, we've got a backup in the commode. Be right there, Duke. So hold on. Before we get started, this is kind of like a kick around episode where Mike and I are going to talk about some topics relating to kind of like the construction of comics and maybe some things that are on Mike's mind about teaching. I have my clip studio open too, so we might do some live drawing for you. But before we get into that, Will just said, "Gotta crash my mom's basement to get his Joes." Our good buddy Bill O'Donnell, who took a little respite, is back. Hey, Bill says, "Did you two see the news about Fan Expo acquiring Denver Comic Con?" Mike, how do you feel about comic book convention movement in news, like especially in the pandemic? Like, does that feel like, I don't know, is that news to you?
I mean,
like,
I think
how do you feel about that?
I don't. I guess I don't really pay that much attention. I mean, I saw that San Diego said, as predicted, that they would not be, in the flesh. They would go virtual. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of things will be assessed next year when we go back. If we go back, how we go back. Yeah. How will people feel? Will people just be so desperate and mad to go to conventions that they'll go crazy? Or will people kind of like, oh, yeah, I'm kind of done a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to say,
Yeah, it really is. And I know me personally, I am not in a hurry to go back to a comic book convention in person. I think people, they're doing their best in their due diligence to do kind of virtual cons and try to get it exciting. And I mean, one of the benefits of having these virtual events is that you have kind of cut off the whole excuse of not being able to attend something, right? Like if you could put on a shirt and stand in front of your laptop, you can be at the London Expo, right? So, I mean, I think there's an opportunity there that you can still get your name out if you kind of, line up to do some of these cons that you probably would never have visited in person.
Well, I also think that just to back it all the way up,
mm-hmm.
comic book conventions are not about comics. They're not about comic creators. They're about entertainment and about general public entertainment, which is not comic books. And mm-hmm. they have comic book creators. But the bigger the show, the less important any comic book creator is. It's more about the stars. So I think when those come back, it's going to be probably maybe even more that way. I would say, I don't know, outside of maybe one professional, anyone who is looking forward to going back, at least until next year, to a comic convention. Now, I know they will schedule them. They have to schedule them and then cancel them to cover their ass to get their insurance money.
Mm.
But, I mean, if I just use the Wizard shows, which there was like 1 million Wizard shows, even the Reed Pop shows, they're not really about the comic book professional. They're about entertainment. And comic is one facet of entertainment, but I believe that we're almost like a sideshow now. You go to San Diego, you're about as far away from everything as you can be. when you're the, where you're the artist. The artist alley is like, way. Where do you go? Artist alleys is always like, it's like shoved to the side at any show.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Will that glut of, or that chunk of people that were going to shows 2 years ago be the same chunk of people that go, or will they have said like, well, I was doing cosplay then, but now I'm doing something else, right? Because people will age through.
Yo, you still there? I think Mike broke the internet. Well, hopefully he'll come back. We've been getting a lot of chop tonight, so hopefully it won't be too bad moving forward. Oh, there you go, Mike.
So we'll see. I just think that, like I said, most of my peers that I talk to, no one is thinking like, everybody gets vaccinated, see how everybody goes back to school, businesses open back up, air travel's not some crazy thing, see what happens with the COVID.
Yeah.
6 months from now, once everybody who wants to get it can get it, right? And then just the fact that, it's going to be a lot more complicated for anybody who runs a show, because, you probably will still have to be wearing masks for the next year, maybe even two,
So hold on, just to kind of go back to what Bill's original point was. He also said his worry is that bigger cons may be trying to take over the smaller independent shows, i.e. Baltimore and Heroes Con are two that are very dear to comic fans, and that's very true. A lot of love for Shelton Drum and the Nathans, who run Baltimore, and Shelton runs Heroes. So, I mean, I don't know, who knows, right? Especially with COVID, I'm not saying anything that I don't really know about, but there's always I don't know, if the future seems so bleak for these kind of shows, like, does it make sense for these big companies to even try to like swallow up these little guys?
Well, I would assume that someone buying a mid-level show is doing it because they're trying to expand their footprint in that marketplace. But, maybe somebody who's running Denver or one of these other shows goes, man, that's a lot of work. I make my money, then I can just show up and have fun. I can just be, I can roll in and roll out and have a good time and maybe help the people with programming or whatever, but I don't have to be, being General Patton the whole weekend. Because that's a lot of work.
It is. It's a super lot of work. And I was going to say something like, well, I hope that, our buddies who run these shows are never under that kind of pressure, but who knows? Like, business is business, right? But also going back to what you just said, Mike, about how a lot of the focus is kind of, for maybe the past 20, 30 years has been slowly just the spotlight has been moving over to other parts of pop culture. Does fandom have a voice in this? Like, is fandom really upset about that? If
no, but there's different kind of fandom. If you go to San Diego, let's say you just took the comic people out, pulled just people there to see comics, buy old comics, get a sketch. That if there's 100,000 people, maybe that's 30. I would say it's not nowhere near half, because people are there and they see comics, but it's just like, oh, you got a giant booth of Lego and a giant booth of Star Wars and a giant thing and a giant of that. There's a lot, TV shows. Nobody's lining up in Hall H for 2 nights in a row to see the guy's going to draw the next issue of X-Men.
Right. They camp it out to see Tom Holland.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just the way, it's been that way for pretty much 20 years now almost. So.
Yeah. I do want to get started, but this is fun. So also our good buddy and friend of the show and us in real life, Matt Waringo, starts talking about NFTs. Mike, have you heard about this?
I just saw something about it today. I've not really. I still don't understand Bitcoin. I don't understand how taking a whole bunch of computers, running some program, makes gold, or
Mm-hmm.
makes. I don't
Right.
understand. If it's a troll with a hammer and king, 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 king. But I was reading just this evening. The girls texted about Jose Delbo, or no, it was Terry Beatty
Mm.
posted. Jose Delbo made some kind of virtual art and he sold it for like 1 point something million dollars. But it was like a GIF or a JPEG or
Mm.
I don't really. And then somebody else posted a link and ArtStation was behind it, and now they seem to have backed off because it's supposedly, using all that energy is bad for the environment
Mm-hmm.
to make the Bitcoin. So, like I said, I still don't understand how running these computers. I read an article earlier in the year about Iran, and it was they had these Bitfarm farms or Bitcoin farms in Iran, and they were buying up all the computer stuff to make in these little rural towns. They were setting up these
Uh,
farms
yeah.
to make, yeah. And so the government came in and said, okay, that's mine now. So they got involved, right?
Right.
Because the electric grid in Iran is like really crappy. So
Mm-hmm.
all these dudes making Bitcoin was jacking the grid. So I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't understand it. I mean, that's just people, right? If people can find some kind of way, to make money, they're going to do it. And they don't. There's a good portion of them. They won't care what you do for the environment because I'll be rich. I can buy sunroof. I have my own organic farm, growing my own Kobe beef.
Kobe beef.
Mm.
So JRD just tries to break this down. NFT are basically digital certificates of authenticity for digital art. It certifies that the owner owns the original piece, not a copy. And people are selling, I guess, their rights as an NFT to people for a monetary value. Is that how that works?
It just sounds like if it's digital, and I send a JPEG to you, and then I delete my JPEG and send you a piece of paper that goes, you, Jamar, are now the only one who has a copy of that JPEG, except for
Mm-hmm.
the ISP and everybody else that traveled through. I don't know. I don't get it.
Or we just punch it out, Mike? Like, I don't know. But yeah, JRD's got the Jake. The receipt is coded into a bit of code embedded to the art. This almost makes me feel like. Did I tell you about this, Mike? This is like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where James Franco had a Kickstarter where he was selling invisible artwork. Do you remember that? It was.
As what's the old saying? A fool and his money is soon parted. This just all sounds like just some kind of shell game. You know,
That's
you're,
isn't it? There's like
you're.
two.
I mean, what happens? What happens when the technology that you have in 100 years? Like if I go buy a Rembrandt, it's still going to be a physical piece of art hundreds of years from now, and it will probably still be worth a fair amount of money unless something really drastic happens in our society that all old master paintings are not worth any money anymore, right?
Mm-hmm,
But it's a physical thing, right?
mm-hmm.
Anything that's electronic, anything that is digital can only exist as long as there's technology that can read that file.
Right.
And there was an article several years back by a some professor was talking about like all the pictures that everybody takes all the time, right? Everybody's got this. Everybody's taking bajillions and bajillions of pictures every day. But at some point, what happens if you can't look at a JPEG? Like you can't look at Super 8. You got to send it to a place that has an old Super 8 thing and can project it into the the gate and convert it to digital. You VHS, you have to convert it to digital. You convert it to CD, and then eventually, like, oh, no more CDs. You got to convert the CD. Get the thing that hooks up to the CD player and convert that to that version of digital. And in 20 years, none of this shit will work. Right? You're going to have some other tech because Mac's putting out new computers in the fall. What happens 15 years from now?
Oh, you're going way too ahead of this.
Right.
I'm trying to get through this weekend.
Right. So what I'm saying is, it seems like a shell game. I'm sure some people are going to get in. They're going to make your money. If I made money on that, I would actually go turn it into real money, like something like a real tangible asset. I don't know. It seems like long term people are going to get burned. Like all those people that were buying those comics bought cases of Superman Returns, and they thought, I'm retiring at 35. I've got 40 cases of Superman Returns.
Right. Now you can't leave your comics on the curb if they won't take them.
That's right. You can be like standing on the highway, throwing out, hey, everybody,
Oh, man, that's crazy. Bill says, Mike, that is actually called digital rot, which you just described.
I've already experienced digital rot.
Do you have to
probably 10 years ago?
Do you get a little comb for that?
Digital rot? No, you got to put some cream on it.
You get an ointment.
A digital ointment for your digital rot.
All right, this is going way too far. So, guys, welcome to the show 30 minutes later. As we said, this is a boot camp. We're going to be real loosey-goosey. I know we had a really giant show last week with Art Adams, and we, as I like to say, we formed Podcast Voltron. Anytime myself, Mike, and Brett are all on the same episode. It was a really good episode, but this is kind of like we get to kind of loosen our belt tonight, take your shoes off, and we're just going to kind of kick it. Mike and I were talking before we went on air about some things that were kind of like getting our gander. And one thing, Mike, you're talking about misinformation in the new teaching space, the new digital teaching space with art students. You want to go into that a little bit?
Sure. I watch other people's podcasts, and I know a lot of other people that teach, and I think we're really moving, whether we go back to traditional schools being open, I think that the digital teaching is here to stay, and I don't think that that's going to go away. I think that's probably only going to continue to become even more so, partially because it's more affordable, right? And one of the things that the pandemic has done to the industry, especially in Hollywood, is it's opened them up to working with people globally and people working remotely. And so I heard the other day someone saying something about, well, I should back up a little bit. One of the things that happens every time of the year, this time of the year, is you start to, if you're a professional artist, you usually start getting emails from graduating students for two reasons. One, hi, I'm Danny. I'm looking for a job. Here's my portfolio. The other one is, hi, I'm Danny. My teacher said I need to find an artist to apprentice to, or, ask a bunch of questions. Those two things. One, I think that's a really crappy assignment that teachers give. It's a real lazy assignment.
It's pretty lazy.
You can burn 2 weeks with that. Oh, who did you talk to? And then we have a whole class where everybody goes, did you talk to anybody? No. Did you write anybody? No. Okay. Well, for next week, right. Okay. And so because of that, I think that, and then on top of that, coupled with that, is I hear people saying, people want advice for portfolios because people also either A, are graduating, trying to put together a portfolio to go to a studio or to get work. Or if you're in high school, put together a portfolio to try to get into art school for the fall. So the spring is always a busy time of people preparing to enter the next stage of their artistic trajectory, right? Mm-hmm. Graduating students to go into the business, into the orbit that they want to achieve. And
oh, that was good. Good too. Yeah. I wonder if other people are having the same type of like
we're back?
Problems. Yeah, you're back. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
So I always advise, since anyone graduating from school, if you're going into comics and you're going into animation, and especially animation, which is like a factory, right? Think of the whole animation business as like a factory. And when you go to a factory, there's all kinds of jobs in the factory, right? There's all kinds of machines. And when you go to the Ford plant, there's all kinds of machines in the Ford plant to build a car, right? So you could be, I'm a tool and die man. Well, we don't have any openings in tool and die, but we have an opening in whatever, fenders, whatever, right? Oh, okay. Have you ever operated a fender machine before? Well, yes, sir. Or no, I've never, And I hear people very often say to the young student, only put things in your portfolio that you want to do. So, and I think that's a little misleading because you do put things in your portfolio that you want to do, but you also put things in your portfolio that if you can't get a job doing that particular thing, shows abilities that would allow you to plug and play in other parts of the factory. So if you go to Disney and you say, I want to be a character designer, but they don't have any openings in character design, well, maybe you've got background design, right? Or environment design, or maybe you've got background paintings, right? You have other things to show. That also means as a student that you have to study the business, monitor the websites of the companies, talk to recruiters, find out what they're looking for, then look at your work and try to figure out, is that something I would enjoy doing or would be good at? So if I can't do storyboards, but they have background design, can I do that? So I think it's important to do a little homework and to arrange your portfolio in a way that if someone, and then put that up on your website, your Twitter, constantly put up work that people can see, make it really easy to see. You don't have to have a website that has a lot of bells and whistles. People just have to be able to see your work. And then that way, if someone contacts you and goes, well, I liked those backgrounds, do you have anything else? Or we're doing a preschool show, do you have anything in that style? It's probably good, if you're going to be a background person, to do things in a couple of different styles. If you're a storyboard person, maybe something humor and something action. You kind of cover your bases. So I think that when people just sort of blanket say, well, just put in your portfolio what you want to do, you should, but you should also have that other part of your portfolio that shows it, well, if they don't have that one job you want, I can do this other job, right? It's the same in comics. If you just want to do superheroes, great. But that doesn't mean you'll get a job doing superheroes. Maybe it's a Western, or maybe it's a romance, or maybe it's humor. right? Show backgrounds, show different types of storytelling. You can show action, but then show something that's creepy or something that's spooky. You have to do a little research, and I find very often that the young student doesn't quite adequately do enough research. Just looking at Instagram is not research. Just looking at Twitter is not research. Just following somebody is not research. You need to talk to the corporation, talk to the people in the corporation that are hiring, the websites that post stuff, and then, if you can, start sending your work to a recruiter. In fact, was it last week or week before, there was somebody on Twitter, new hiree at, I believe it was DreamWorks or one of those places. Yeah. They're a recruiter, and they were saying, hey, send me your portfolio, right? Try to develop a relationship with that person, right? If they don't write you back, don't take it personal. Write them again. If you write them 2 or 3 times and they never respond, that might be telling you that your work isn't.
You're whack.
And that's another big thing, because a lot of times people go through art school and they graduate, and then there's that uncomfortable part of like, I spent all this money, I went to art school, everybody told me I was great, I graduate, and no one will give me a friggin' job. No one responds to my work. And likes on Instagram do not make a career. You do hear that they will hire people if they have a lot of likes, but the rubber always hits the road when you have to execute work under deadline pressure.
Yeah.
Not just put something up so 1,300 people can like your drawing of a whatever, Wolverine or a witch or something, right? And I think that that's harder for younger people. I feel for them, because they're like having to navigate social media and just how difficult it is for anyone to get a job.
You know what, Mike? This is interesting. We haven't had a discourse on the show in a while. I'm enjoying this. We always kind of attack the windmill the same way on the show. We always talk about, I think in our minds, we are trying to give advice to that high school student who's maybe has raw talent, but is just like not being led the right way, or they're trapped by some parents who don't understand what the next step is and things like that. But I also think that we probably have a lot of either enthusiasts who are probably further up the road than somebody like that, or maybe even parents. Hear me out. Maybe even parents who have kids who are younger, who are showing an affinity for drawing, but it's scaring them. So if we could just pull back for a minute. So just like imagine remember when we used to teach like grade school kids? And once in a while there'd be like maybe a couple of kids that, when a parent is in the doorway and go, well, Mr. Manley, is he any good? Can you just give it to me straight? What should I do? Should he go to, I don't know what to do with this. Do you think that this road that a young artist is on should start earlier? Kind of like how basketball prospects start real young,
It doesn't hurt. But again, there's no guarantee, because, you can love something when you're 10, and when you're 13, you never want to done. I mean, we've all had brothers and sisters that loved things, and friends that loved stuff. People that loved comics when the same age as us. And, no parent really understands, even if they support you, unless they're actually trying to do it themselves. There's a part that they can't really understand. So right. I just always advise the parent to buy them lots of paper and pencils, encourage them to be creative, music, drawing, whatever. And if the person really wants to do that, That's basically all you got to do. You just got to say, here's more material. You like that? Would you like to take a class? Would you like to take a lesson? If they're really serious, become more serious about it, they really love it, they just take to it like a fish to water. I don't think you can make an artist or you can make a musician. And there are many people who were discouraged from being an artist or being a musician because their parents were afraid or didn't understand. I mean, that's like the classic story, and went on anyway and said, screw it. This is what I want to do despite all odds, and become successful. It's still the same percentage of 2 or 3% of people that actually go all the way through. So I would say because I've done the career day with parents, I say, if they love it, great. Then just give them more opportunity to do it, more support to do it. If their attention is going to wane in time, well, then they'll find something else that they want to do. That's fine. Right. That's fine. You don't lose by encouraging your kid to take piano lessons or painting lessons or archery lessons or tap dancing lessons. You don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's even thinking about, like, say, a kid who has to practice his scales on the trumpet, and it's just like that's the last thing he wants to do. And I think even maybe practice as an artist is a little different, right? So if a kid kind of, and this is what I would see a lot teaching younger kids, is that they have bursts of inspiration and then they exhaust it and then they're done and don't want to touch it again. Right. And a lot of my resistance with them, and even talking to their parents after sessions or after the summer is over, is like the uncomfortable truth of all of this is that as much as a kid really enjoys art, enjoys drawing, the reality is that a professional has to draw past the pleasure threshold. Right. You have to learn how to draw after you don't want to draw anymore. Right. So if the kid likes to draw, then he puts the pencil down, I'm done. Let's go outside.
Well, I think that is kind of natural, but I think that the person who has the greatest chance to do this is the one who naturally takes to it.
Right.
Like my brother did. Like music is very immediate. You start playing the drums, you start making noise. You start playing a piano, it's immediate. Mm-hmm. And my brother, Dave, who he liked to draw too, but I think music was more immediate for him. Mm-hmm. I like music, but I like drawing more. I wish that I had learned to play an instrument now, but I love drawing, and despite anything else, it's just something that I normally gravitated to. And the students that I have taught that have gone all the way through and then become professionals or are in the process of becoming professionals, that's what they love to do. I don't think you can take a person and make them sit in a room by themselves in their brain working unless they really, really love it, almost more than anything else. There are other people that are, but they also like to play music and rock climb or whatever. How many comic book artists do you know that rock climb? Not a lot. Mm-hmm. How many comic artists do you know that play music? More than rock climb. But not everybody plays an instrument, Mm-hmm. So I think if you encourage them and that's what they really like to do, they will just keep doing it. If they don't really like to do it and maybe they change when they're 14 and they hit puberty, well, then that's just a natural thing. It's like I teach high school kids. 99.9% of the high school kids that I teach are never going to be professional artists. They may continue to enjoy art all their life, so that's great. But if you're going to become a professional, then that takes a different level of commitment, as it would be to be a musician or an Olympic athlete or, a writer. It's all this, it's like time in, dedication, and you love the dedication. Like my brother loves to practice, and he teaches music, and you have the kid that shows up every week, and he would love to be able to play, Stairway to Heaven, whatever. Can't. Did you practice? No.
No, yeah.
I'll show up every week. Won't really practice, so they just never get any better.
Mm-hmm. So really what all this comes down to is maybe finding that you have, and I'm going to say this word again, an affinity for something, and loving it almost beyond question.
It's a compulsion.
And
I think it
you have
almost
to
has
be,
to be, yeah.
you have to be stubborn to want to do it, right? Because there's a million reasons to not,
And a lot
if,
more distractions. I mean, when I was 13, you had only a few hours of TV a day, right? No internet, no computer. So you had much less calling your attention. Now you've got computer 24 hours, cell phone 24 hours. There are a lot of things pulling your interest, and not just comics. Now you got comics and movies and games and all these, virtual VR and all these other things pulling. So you've got a lot of paths and opportunities. But I think if you enjoy drawing, really enjoy drawing, then you will always end up prioritizing that. And if you don't, then chances of you doing it as a professional, for most people, I mean, one of the things is people always like to point to the exception to the rule, right? The one or two people who never learned perspective, never learned their anatomy, didn't do this, didn't do that, and now I got $1 million. I'm big and famous, But if you were going to be that person, you already would have been that person. I always say that you'd already be that person. You wouldn't even be here. You'd be off, like firing off on all rockets, going off to be successful. So that's like a false. It's just like a false
narrative, right?
Yeah, because you could point to guys in the 80s that became famous and made a lot of money. Are people reading their stuff now? Are they household names?
Right.
No. So I say broaden your portfolio, structure it to do what you want, but also structure it so that you can plug and play. 99.99% of people who graduate from school and go into animation plug into some aspect of the factory. Almost no one starts out with being like, you get to be Bruce Timm, right? You get to be Sid Mead. You get to be the person who completely redesigns all of Star Wars, right? Almost nobody gets something like that, right?
Even Bruce Timm wasn't Bruce Timm for a while.
No, Bruce Timm wasn't Bruce Timm for well over 10 years, maybe more than that. He worked in animation a long time on stuff like Tiny Toons, stuff like that. So again, I think that the false narrative that's projected by social media does give people a false idea of what success is like and how you attain it and how most people attain it and maintain it. Because it's one thing to get a job, but it's another thing to maintain it. Maintain a career, 20, 30, 40. I mean, I'm coming up on my 40th year of doing it, right? So to me, that's what you want, is you want to be able to do that. So I think you have to really study the colleges, pick the school for your discipline that you're interested in, look at the teacher's work, look at the graduate's work. If the teacher's work sucks, don't go to the school. First rule. Then look at the graduates. How many people went there? If they don't have any good alumni, don't go to that school. I've reached so many young students who have no idea. They just want the dream, but they don't really know about how to go about it. And, you have to. The one thing about the main difference between medical school and art school is that to get into medical school is very hard. Extremely hard. You have to have good grades. You have to, take tests, get letters of recommendation. It's really difficult to go to medical school. Art school, many art schools go, you got a checkbook?
I'm laughing because I know a couple of those places.
Right.
Hey, your check clear. Congratulations.
Right. Exactly. So, and then if you're going to write to a professional like Jamar or me, know something about the professional.
Man.
Don't insult them by sending them a stupid letter that lets them know, first off, that you don't know anything about me, anything about my work, anything about what I do, anything about my career. You're just, I gotta get this by Monday.
Yeah.
And then be polite. Hello. Thank you. They write you back. Write back. Yeah, I'm not your buddy. I'm not your homie.
You're not my homie.
You're not my homie. Don't address me like a homie, right? And because I see people do that, they keep that attitude, and then when you get more of a business official situation, they still keep that attitude, and then people right away are going like,
mm-hmm. There's a couple of things in the chat I want to get to, and this is interesting. Okay. I'm enjoying it, just kicking it. Feels refreshing. After having such a weird week, it's good to just kind of wind it down and talk. Our buddy, what up, Asa Taylor? Asa says, books on artists and techniques were really helpful for an introverted kid I know. That's an interesting point. So thinking about how we talk a lot about you having to have some moxie, Mike Manley, to make anything happen in this industry. It's very rare that your phone just rings and opportunities on the other end of the phone. You got to get on an airplane and go to things. You got to get in your car and go to things. You got to get in people's faces. You got to shake some hands and kiss some babies. So for an introverted person who may be really talented or really blah, blah, blah online, but can't seem to like put the pieces together to call the editor or look up where the studio is and actually go over there and call somebody or talk to somebody, where's the entry point for them? Or do they need to change?
They need to change.
That's just real rap, as we like to say here in Philadelphia.
They need to change. No one owes you a career. No one owes me a career. No one owes anybody a career, right? This is an industry that people are more than happy to hire you if you can provide them what they need.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to go out of their way to make sure that you shy retiring person can. No, they're not going to do that, right? Because there's a lot of other people who aren't, and they're all running towards the same door you are, right?
Right.
And a lot of artists are shy people. They're not aggressive. That might mean that animation might not be the thing for you. Maybe kids book. It's much more low key. You can talk to somebody. You might go to a book fair, but you have to come out of your shell, and it is your responsibility. It's not anyone else's responsibility. And a lot of people talk about luck, but I believe that luck is a combination of preparation meeting opportunity. Mm-hmm. If someone is not prepared to meet an opportunity, the opportunity comes and they fumble the ball, or they don't even see it. They don't even see it. So, if you get an opportunity, but you don't call the person back, or you don't follow through, you don't do a little research.
Mm-hmm. Well, hold on. Let me press pause on this because Ace just said in the chat. His comment was kind of referring to encouraging kids early. So let's rewind this. So, what if you have a kid that's interested but is still kind of a little meek? Is that the time to maybe hand them a stack of books? To say if this might be something you're into. I'm all about encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah. But that goes back to my earlier point. If they're interested, then you give them more paper and more pencils. That's what my grandma did, right? My
Yeah.
grandma would give me a lot of paper and pencils. My mom and dad did a lot of paper and pencils. I did the rest, right?
Right.
If you give them that and you encourage them, yeah, that's good. Or you look at their work, you ask them if they want to take a lesson, or you go to the library and you check out more books, or you buy a DVD, or you buy some online lessons. There's like so many simple ways you can encourage even a shy kid to be creative, But when you go beyond a certain point and you become a teenager, you've got to learn to crawl out of your shell, because there's no way to do this job from inside your shell. Right? That's just reality. You cannot be, terrified to talk to people on the phone. You've got to go to the opportunity, right? Because otherwise opportunity might by chance come along and maybe you can't even see it, or you're too afraid to take advantage of it. I deal with a lot of shy kids. That is probably the most common trait of comic and illustration students, even more so than painters, because comics and animation live in your imagination, and you're pulling it from your head inside, where the average person who was a painter is like looking at like, oh man, that's a beautiful landscape, or that's a model, or that's a still life, or whatever. I want to respond to that, right? Yeah, but a cartoonist, is like inside their head and thinking like, this character's doing this, and this is the world. It's all firing on. Because I remember thinking that, and I had a couple of years where like I had exceedingly quiet classes. Everybody was like an introvert, and they would work, and they would kind of talk to each other at the table, but they were very quiet and all. They did a lot of work, but it was all they're all in their head.
How did your crits go? Did they participate, or did they shrink away from that kind of spotlight on themselves?
Well, in the high school class, it's not really a crit. Not like everybody hang their thing up and now we're going to look at what Jessica did. No, we're not going to do that, right? What I do is tend to go to each person, find out what they like, what are they interested in, and then I try to help them think of a project if they don't have one, or give them one so they have an opportunity to work on it. And then I present them with like, oh, if you'd like to do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, this is this bad. Or if you'd like to try this, blah, 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 blah. And I bring in different books and I show them different art and different styles just to encourage them to create. That's the most important thing, is to create. Not even whether it works out, whether it's good, whether it's bad, just engage in the activity of creating and let everything else come out of that. And I find that helps, especially the shyer or the person who is afraid, because a lot of people are actually not that bad, but they are intimidated because they see, oh shit, that person over there, they're really good. I'm not good.
Yeah, self-defeating.
Yeah. But now we're talking about young teenage people, right? When you're in college, it's different, right? When you're in college, you can't really operate in that. Or if you do, then you realize that you're a fine artist and you can only create to your own muse. You can't be a commercial art person and deal with the world in that way, because you won't be able to, talk to people and meet the deadlines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I don't think one or the other is better. It's just who you are,
JRD has a reaction to shy kids and coming out of your shell. He said something a little earlier, but he says, take that kid to a comic show with a dedicated kids section, like Kids Love Comics. An entire section of creators picked to entertain and cater to young, shy kids and encourage them. And that's one of the really good boons about having shows that are independent, like Baltimore Comic Con, where we can come and set up something like that and have a dedicated section to interact with. And, a lot of times the biggest thing that I see are kind of gun shy parents. Right. Not to flip it too much, but you see a lot of parents who drag their kids through the Kids of Comics section on their way to get Wolverine prints. You know what I mean? Like, well, the kids are like bored out of their minds, or the kid goes, "Ooh, look at that! No, come on, we got to get these Flash variants." So that's its own issue in and of itself. But yeah, I will say every minute I get that the whole reason that we do these kind of kids workshops and stuff is that we have to keep comics alive by getting a new generation into them, because they're totally going to miss it.
But there's a whole generation of people that are coming into comics through the middle age, middle school books that are completely still skipping around the whole like direct market thing. So
middle grade,
middle grade. So I totally separate encouraging someone who's young to be creative, and then you make your decisions and how you're going to operate based upon what that person does, right? I do believe that, like, if someone is taking music lessons and they wanted to make music lessons, they should take them all. And then the next time, if they don't want to do it anymore, then don't do it. But you should follow through. Because I think follow through is an important thing for students. I think if you don't learn to follow through, even if later on you say, I don't want to do that anymore, it makes it exceedingly hard for you as you grow up, because there's going to be many, many times you got to follow through on something.
Yeah.
You have to be able to find that way of following through and not fold. And I see a lot of college students cost themselves a lot of money and a lot of grief because they can't follow through.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is interesting. What's up, Amani? I haven't seen you around in a while. Our boy Amani Latif just had some spicy content I want to bring into the chat. Amani says, and Amani's a fantastic teacher, kids are into manga. Ironically, a lot of instructors are discouraging kids from drawing in a manga style. You want to touch on that?
I don't think that that's as much now. I honestly don't. I think that of the older generation of people, that was very common.
I've seen that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I think now, I mean, I'm 59. Most of my teachers were 5, 10, 20, 30 years older than me when I was in art school, right? And just I'll just use the Academy, Papa, as an example. When I started in 2008, I was a cartoonist. Ha ha! Now there were some teachers that were old marbleheads. We got along fine. There were other teachers who were like, cartoonist, huh? Mm-hmm. Well, that won't help you here, Mr. Manley. Right? Yeah, I actually even had one teacher tell me that now, which of course was BS. But in that 10 years, from the time I went to 2012, they decided, we're going to add an illustration program. So you can't be telling, right. So you cannot start telling kid, don't be drawing that manga head, right? Because that's illustration. So I think that honestly is aging out. And what I try to do is say, manga's great. Do you know where manga came from? And then I lead them from their interest back through the history of manga, back into the history of cartooning. Mm-hmm. So you may not like Cats and Jammer Kids, and you may not like Disney, but if you know where it comes from, that still gives you some perspective that this thing that you like just didn't
magically appear.
Yeah, and I've turned on a lot of students over the last nearly 20 years of teaching, into all kinds of stuff that they didn't know about, like all of a sudden they might find out about Mooka, and there was a kid who liked war comics. He'd never heard of John Severin or Russ Heath or any of the EC stuff. And I brought some stuff in for him and like melted his head. He didn't even know that stuff existed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think if someone is discouraging a student from the beginning, because that's how my art teachers were when I was in high school, my fine art teacher was, then they're just a bad teacher. But I really don't think any good teacher would now discourage people from drawing an anime head. What you try to do is get them to make a better anime head and then to expand from that. It's like, eat your Kraft macaroni cheese, have some green beans with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You can't just be all starch. It doesn't,
That's the name of this new podcast, All Starch with Mike Manley. All carbs. But you know what? I remember being in spaces. This was maybe 10 years ago, 11 years ago, teaching and having other people and my other instructors in my program come down the hall and go, Jamar, do you know what this manga stuff? What is this stuff? Like, there were a lot of the instructors were so kind of dumbfounded by this. It couldn't, basically, it's like they couldn't understand the language that the students were speaking. That's where kind of like the age thing comes into play.
But that's kind of on them, because you could say that about anything, right? You could say that about, I don't know, oil painting, and there's some new medium, some new alkyd medium, and like, alkyd, I don't believe in using anything but rabbit skin glue and grinding my own pigments. And you're always going to have that in art. You're always going to have the teacher that's the traditionalist, and you're never going to change anything, But I think, manga's manga's older than I am, right? I mean, we've been watching Astro Boy since the early 60s, so it's not. Right. It's only new if you're really ignorant and you haven't been looking at anything for the last 40 years.
Well, the scary thing, and just to maybe wrap up with what Amani's getting at, the scary thing is if you do have an instructor who is so vehemently against something like that they don't understand, that could really scare away a lot of kids, right? So if it's like an all or nothing thing where it's like, oh, I don't want these kids drawing this big-eyed stuff in my class, and they're not giving them the history like you were just talking about, Mike, that's a lost opportunity for growth, right? I remember when I was teaching and I would see a lot of kids were bringing their comics, and it was a lot of manga devices they were using in their storytelling, which is really popular now. Kind of like, say, if somebody's angry, they have a giant head with sharp teeth, and there's like lines everywhere. Yeah, and the in the pulsating vein, or if they're crying, there's the teardrop, and like all that stuff is fine, But I would try to teach them the other ways of showing emotion in a comic. Like, yes, right. It's a short, like that stuff is manga and anime shorthand, right? But you should still know where that stuff came from,
and also other ways of expressing, right? Because not everybody knows what that means,
right.
Like, everybody knows what an exclamation point is,
right?
But not everybody knows what a vein in somebody's forehead means,
right? Yeah.
Or like a big tear. Not everybody, most 40-year-olds don't know what that big tear is.
Right. Yeah, and it's kind of like it's exclusive visual language. Like, you have to know what that is for it to make sense to you, which kind of like betrays a little bit of the iconography of cartooning, right? It was supposed to be simple, so you got it. Like, wavy lines around somebody's fist means that they're shaking it. You get that. But, some of these new kind of devices need some explanation.
I thought that meant wavy lines around a fist meant Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi. My favorite thing in the bathroom, there was a graffiti on the hand dryer where it says, "Press button, receive bacon." This has got the wavy line. Oh, here's one thing. Thanks, Amani. And I guess we're just kicking it tonight. Here's one thing, and here's my big elephant to bite tonight, Mike Manley. Is there an age limit on becoming a professional? Because we talked about the beginning of it. We talked about being a kid in front of your TV with a crayon in your hand, to being in high school and trying to figure out how to talk to people in college. What if you did the rest of your life and now your kids are out of the house and you got a sketchbook and you're like, all right, this is it. Is there, I think it's an interesting conversation. Do you think is there a ticking clock on being a professional artist?
Yes. Yes. There is a clock. There's the clock of your personality. And I would say that by the time most people are in their mid-20s, their personality starts to quick. What was it, that guy on Game of Thrones that was turning into the stone guy, like the gray gargoyle grabbed him, and he was slowly. All right. That's what happens to people's personalities by the time they get in their mid-20s. You're very flexible when you're in your teens, very flexible before that. But you become less flexible past your mid-20s. Less flexible by the time you're in your mid-30s. And once you're over 40, now I'm talking about not that you can't learn to be a better artist, that you can't learn to draw or paint better, but you're talking about very specifically doing what you or I do for a living. It is almost impossible. And it is almost impossible because, one, your life usually by then is so complicated, right?
Yeah.
Do you have the time to do? I mean, I devoted how many hours between the time I was 13 and I was 23 to getting into the business? I was 23. Thousands of hours, right? Do you have thousands of hours to devote to something when you're 40?
Yeah.
Probably not. Now, maybe if you're 40 and you're single and you got a lot of money because you busted your leg and you got insurance payout.
Yeah.
And I say that just because I have never observed anyone that I know of becoming a professional artist beyond the mid-30s. And very few in the mid-30s. Most people between early 20s, late 20s, break in, and then it's 10 years of building your career. 10 years of working, getting the next job, going on to the next thing, going on the next book or the next show,
right.
building your contacts, right? Building your resume, building your skill set. Because the one thing you have is skill set you have when you come out of school, which you're always working on, and then it grows when you actually start really working. So I would say no, it's almost impossible. Now, there was always one person out there who was like, I'm 97 years old, and now, ding, I'm designing concepts for some video game company, right? There's always one exception, one or two exceptions. But I would say, in my experience, and I've known hundreds and hundreds of artists and students by this point in my life, I don't know anyone who started mid-40s and became a professional, right? That doesn't mean it can't happen. But I'm not sitting down and going, oh, yeah, there's 20 or 30 people I know who started at 50 and now are the head of whatever. Right?
ILM, right? Yeah.
I know hundreds of people that started in their 20s and moved along.
Right. So
less in the 30s.
And just to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, it's just like the struggle we've talked about, and even like the millions of stories that we've shared over the years of our friendship, even being on the road together, and just even talking to other creatives over all this time, are like these shared experiences of learning on the job. One of my favorite phrases lately is building the airplane while you're flying in it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like
That's a
you're
very internet. That's a
right,
very internet saying.
right. So, but I don't. I'm agreeing with you, but I also know that nothing's impossible for somebody who wants it bad enough.
All right, that's what I said, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not impossible, but I don't know 20 people. I don't know 10 people
Yeah.
that started from scratch in their 30s
Mm-hmm.
or 40s or 50s, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went back to school with a lot of people who were professionals, graduated, went back to school, learned to be better painters, and have become and are painting. All right, but they did that based upon the fact that they had enough money from their previous career that they could go and devote their time to becoming a better painter. How many of those people are making 50 grand a year selling paintings, which would mean if you sold 50 grand worth of paintings, you take home $25,000 because 50% would be going to your gallery, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know a lot of people like that going into animation. I don't know any stories like that. I would be happy to hear stories like that. So that's what I'm saying. The older you get, the chances of you being able to do it decrease. I think mainly because your life becomes so complicated.
Yeah.
If you've got a wife and you got kids going to college and you're in your mid 40s, you're now going to say, fuck it. I'm going to be drawing Spider-Man. I'm going to learn. I got how to draw comics the Marvel way, and I taken some online cartooning lessons, and now it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anybody that happened to.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody can point out 20 people, right? If you go on Instagram tonight, there's 10,000 artists, easy. Probably 100,000 artists.
Mm-hmm.
Show me 20 that did that,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would be ecstatic. But I don't know. Do you know anybody that happened to?
It's tough, man. It's tough. And I know a lot of aspiring people. I know working pros who've come from different legs of life who are making business, making their way, but they didn't start out fresh out the box. You know what I mean? They'd been in the game for a while. Or
it's also another thing to maybe we should clarify.
Okay.
Again, all right. I'm talking about making your living solely as a cartoonist, as an artist. I'm not saying making your living with something else and then you're still doing your thing, which is fine. I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. But I'm talking about a person who the 1099 or the W-2 says Marvel, Disney, Tomorrow's, whatever. You made your living not from Wachovia, not from Ford Motor, not from something. You made your living selling your artwork.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can be happy and successful and be a small-time publisher, and that works for you, right? But I try to separate it very clearly because I try not to paint a picture for anyone or a student or someone asking my advice that would give them a false thing. Because I hear this thing all the time where I think people want to be nice, teachers want to be nice, podcasts want to be nice, and they want to be very positive, and they want to whoop, 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 everybody positive. But I think that they spread falsehood because the people go, yes, that's going to be me. And it really isn't going to be you unless you do these very specific things. Right. And one thing always made me mad as a student and a young person, and makes me mad as a teacher when I see people shine people on with false hope, a false hope. I think that's worse. The worst thing to do is to give somebody false hope. It would be better for you to say, I tried to get in the NBA twice and I couldn't make it, than to keep telling that person, well, you're 35 and your knees are shot and you're 50 pounds overweight, but fantasy camp next year.
Well, I think there's a small sliver there where, and we talk about it all the time, that there have been people in almost all of our lives who told you, like when you called the animation studio, and the guy on the phone was like, oh, a comic studio was like, don't work in this business. It's a shit business, kid. Like we've all come across that kind of resistance, right? So I think
Well, I think that's
different.
that's different. Yeah, because I think right. So if some old guy who worked in animation for 40 years goes, kid, don't work in this business. It's a shit business. One, he was right. There is a part of it that's a shit business, right? Number two, he's doing the tough love thing. Now, there are still people walking into Hanna-Barbera that day with a portfolio, probably getting hired. So if I said to somebody, if you're 35 years old, it's going to be really hard, almost impossible for you to make it as a cartoonist. And that alone shot their plane down.
Yeah.
Their plane was never going to fly and land anyway.
Right. Their armor wasn't that thick to begin with.
Right. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm not saying that this can't happen. It's almost never going to happen because it almost never has happened. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, maybe you're the one person who can skew that, and you can have the dedication, and you can have the talent. It's more the dedication and the drive and the ability to learn than it actually is talent. Talent's like fourth or fifth thing down the road. It's the other things that are important. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. When I knew this young guy in the class, was thinking about going into the military. I think I told the story before. And then he thought he would be an artist. And he was worrying about whether trying to like half and half. And I go, you can half and half it if you're doing it for pleasure. But if you're trying to do what I'm doing for a living, you can't. Because all that time you're going to be in basic training. You got to be basic training for drawing. And you can't split it. You can split it for enjoyment or as a hobby. Mm-hmm. And if you do your 20 years and you graduate, then you're like a lot of the people in the academy. They did time in the army, graduated, came back, got better at drawing. Whether you will be able to launch a career at that point, I think will be very difficult. Not impossible, but nearly impossible based upon my experience of knowing, like I said, the people in the business. Now, it was true after World War II and after Vietnam, artists came back from the military, would go to school on the GI Bill. A lot of the guys in the Golden Age and the Silver Age did that, and then went on to do comics. But again, life was also cheaper and was easier. When your apartment was $35 a month, not average apartment in the United States, I think it's $1,400 a month now for a one bedroom. I mean, like you got to, So you got to. I'm just trying to be encouraging if that's what you want to do, but also realistic.
See, and this is the interesting thing about what we've been doing, Mike, for 2 years almost with this podcast, because we've been around for a minute, and with the magazine, which is 15, 20 years old now at this point, is give people a realistic snapshot of what this business is. And, we're both teachers. We both are very encouraging. We're very attaboy in places, but the shit is hard. I don't know any other way to say that. And I think what gets lost in the translation, especially with the internet and social media, and you see all of this amazing art and everybody's doing all this kind of stuff, is that it must somehow be easy, right? So when you
just like cooking, when you look at, you can watch 100 cooking shows, it all looks easy.
Right.
Everything, the cup is perfect. It has the perfect amount of.
It's got the perfect
butter, right, and the butter's perfectly boiling and everything, and then look at this amazing pie. Not like, oh shit, I was on the phone or my oven bakes uneven, or shit, the bottom burnt because it got too hot. It's like we don't have that show. That's not like the fuck up cooking show. Called I Tried, and the shit's like all burnt.
Coming up next with it.
It's
Next week, this week, when at least you tried,
That's right.
we'll be making a souffle. Right.
Yeah. Shit's all lopsided and got a big divot in the middle of it.
And I sometimes come off like I'm trying to like defend my spot a lot. Like I say things like this on Coffee Break. I think us having this platform and even getting on this thing live every week and talking about the business makes it look easy, right? And so when Mike, you do a drawing tutorial or you put a drawing up on our YouTube channel and people are like, wow, that's amazing. They kind of forget that you have decades of experience behind that hand movement. You know what I mean? Decades, and even like years before you were professional. That informed.
All the years where it was shit.
Yeah,
I was trying to get good, right?
Yeah,
like you're 13 and you're trying to how many horrible drawings did I do when I was 13 or 14 or 17? And I posted that stuff on my Facebook a couple years ago, a couple weeks ago. My first samples, I was trying to get work at Marvel that didn't get me work. Mm-hmm. Inspired by our buddy John Hebing, posted all of his samples of like work that didn't get him work. Mm-hmm. And people are like, oh, that's fantastic. Oh, that's
right.
So I think that the most important thing for a teacher is to be honest. That's it. To be honest. Be honest with your critique, to be honest with your feedback, to be honest with your encouragement. And if the student finds that to be too discouraging, then they're really not professional artist material.
Now, I'm going to keep belaboring this because it's a really interesting conversation. I think that our society has kind of created this thing where people expect you to be nice or kind, or at least even with how you deal with people. Say you send your kid to the school. Well, this is the professor. Oh, my professor's an asshole because he told me he doesn't like my palette. I don't like him. So there's a lot of other emotions mixed up with students now. It's like, oh, I'm cutting class because my teacher hates me.
Can you go to medical school? And I have several close friends whose children are doctors. You cannot go to medical school and go, oh, my chemistry teacher's a dick. I'm going to skip class. You're like, see ya. They kick you right the hell out of school, right? So I think part of the problem is art school from the get-go is set up to give a false narrative to suck money out of kids' parents' pockets.
Ooh, I like it. That's spicy.
And I really believe that almost all art schools should be shut down, scrubbed out, and reformed because they charge people too much money when 98% of those students, no medical school would fail to turn out 98% of its students as doctors and still be able to keep its accreditation as a medical school.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Having been through the system and part of the system, I just really think that most art schools are a ripoff. There are good people within those schools. There are good teachers within those schools, but the construct of the school overall is not set up now to guarantee the most of the students who go to those schools to come out and to be successful. Time and time again, I'll have an old student tell me, oh, I thought I did really good. Everybody was giving me, good grades. And then they graduate and they're not working they didn't achieve their dream. They didn't work in the business. So like I said, I don't believe it's about being mean or,
right.
Why would I want to go to teach a 6-hour class just so I could make a 19-year-old cry? So what am I gonna get out of that? I lose money if I can compare the amount of time.
You're really cracking up. Say it again, Mike. Try it again.
I was gonna say, if I was doing that, then I'm actually losing money because I make more money as a professional than I do as a teacher. So to spend that much time, which is more than the class time, it's always more than just your hours after, and coaching people for years after why would I want to do that? I just think it's there's that falsehood that's set up at the beginning of art schools because they let people in who are not ready.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just keep them there. And then they get to the end and they're still not ready, but they're kind of bitter that they're not ready.
Right.
And I've had the student who's like, oh, he's mean. It's like, no, I'm just telling you that what you did there is not good enough. And if you want to achieve your dream, you've got to make it better. Now, if you just want me to tell you that it looks great, then I'm lying to you, which is worse than being mean to you.
I want to tell a story real quick. So, and I've been kind of talking about this lately. I've been kind of reminiscing about college. And when I was in my freshman year at UArts, this is 1990, like the very beginning of the 90s. And one of my foundation and basics, and one of my basics instructor in 2D, this was an old school, arms folded for 6 hours drill sergeant. He hated everybody's work and he would tell you about it. This is like, if everybody's always heard the rumor of, I was in the class where the dude ripped up somebody's assignment and threw it out the window. He was that kind of professor. I remember once he said, after we did a crit, you know what? I'm not even going to walk the wall. I would like you all to go home and call your parents and tell them to come pick you up and get a refund from the bursar's office because none of you should be here. My 9-year-old daughter draws better than all of you, and I don't care how you feel about it. Right? So there were...
And did everybody go, ooh, jump up and down like that?
That wasn't the vibe.
Were tears?
Well, let's hold on. I'm going to get to that. So reading the room, because I was one of the students, reading the room, there were people that were violently angry with him and stood up and challenged them. You can't say that to me, blah, blah, blah. Some people ran crying out the room. Some people just looked at their feet and just were blinking a lot. And I don't really remember how I acted. I think I was more kind of oh, snap, that's wild he said that. I didn't take it personally, but it affected.
You didn't you sleep with the fishes.
But it affected me in a way where I was just like, huh. And I remember I started cutting class, Mike. I remember it was like a 1:30 studio class, and we'd be all in the cheesesteak spot, and it'd be like 1:15. Everybody'd be like, "All right, man, I gotta go."
Nobody was running. Nobody was running. Going to class.
They're like, "Yo, JN, you coming?" Like, "Nah, I'm a chill. I'm a chill here." Well, what? Don't you have class? Like, "No, I'm good." I was immature, right, in my own way, because I wasn't ready to be there. This guy was more of an example of the pirate ship I grew up on. When I went to UArts, you couldn't leave art supplies laying on your table if you went to the bathroom. You came back, your shit was gone. You know what I mean? It was like a den of thieves at my school. But anyway, I screwed up pretty bad my second or whatever semester of my first year. And at some point I had to gut check myself, and I went into the studio to talk to the professor after class to tell him I was too immature to be in the class at that time. And I'm glad he said that. I had to figure my own shit out.
What did he say?
And he was like, "Good, let's get to work." You know what I mean? And that was kind of like a really old school way of weeding out people. I know that sounds really fucked up. And I know that sounds like not a good way to be a professor. Those guys don't really last anymore. The way the system works at art school now, those guys wouldn't make it teaching that aggressively. or speaking to students in that manner. Not 20,
Unless they were famous.
well,
Unless they were famous. Then
Right.
you're famous, you can come and like shit on a chocolate cake and put it on the desk and like, I'm done. Oh, he's famous.
Our buddy Will just said, I had a drawing teacher that made someone cry because they had the wrong art supplies. This was a night class with older adults. Never seen anything like that. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is everybody put the time in, Mike, right? And we wouldn't be friends for this long, or have been even in the same stratosphere to talk to half the people we talk to or be friends with if I wasn't a pro, right? That's just how it is.
Well, and I think that again, I always remember my bad art teacher, so I try not to be a bad art teacher.
Bad art teacher.
Right. I remember being the bad art teacher. So I never say to somebody, don't draw manga, or don't do this, or don't do that. All right. What I try to do is say, okay, if you want to do that, you can just do that. If you just want to sit there and just draw that, I won't make you draw something, but if you want to learn to draw something better, here's the ways of doing it. If you want to do what I do, you want to be in my game, there's a path to that game, right? There's really only a little deviation from the path to acquire the skills in the time allotted to go through school and then come out of school. Again, I think of it really a lot in the beginning, especially to form the good habits, good foundation. Very much like the military. The military goes, there's one way to make a bed. There's one way to clean your gun, right? There's one way to do things. Once you learn that one way, fine. You know it. You don't have to worry about it anyway because you know how to do it. Like there's one way to prime a canvas, right, for oil. There's a couple variations of it, right? There's one way to do layouts that's really the most effective, right? There's, one way to do lettering, pretty much. Almost everybody does it that way. When you start to study it, you see most people kind of do layouts a certain way with slight variation, right? Most people learn, if you want to draw a face symmetrical, there's kind of one way to make things symmetrical, right? Using the center lines and things like that, the guidelines. Why does every art book, figure drawing, start with the puppet? Right? You can buy 1,000 art books. You can all open them up to the big page. You're going to do a portrait. What do? They every single one does it, right? So the idea that you can be the one genius that will never have to do that, well, you wouldn't even be in the class because you'd already be genius. You'd already be genius, right? So I think in the beginning, is really important for artists to learn those foundation things, because once you learn them, then you can give over to creativity and you have the skill set to express your idea. Because to me, the most frustrating thing is to want to draw a horse, but it looks like shit. And you draw it 15 times and it looks like shit. Why does my horse look like shit? Because I don't know how to draw a horse. How do I get to better at drawing a horse? I've got to literally practice how is a horse constructed? And the simple block construction, maybe down to the specific anatomy, studying the hooves, studying the neck, the different breeds of horses. Yeah, you applied yourself for 2, 3, 4 months of doing that, you'd be able to draw a horse pretty decently. Do that for 3 or 4 years, you might draw a horse fantastic. But people want to try to create this false equivalence of, I'm an artist and I'm free and I don't need rules. And my teacher came in and he was mean to me and he told me I needed to learn how to do this. And I didn't need to do that. I just needed to listen to my own muse. Well, then why are you even in art school? Why don't you just go off and be a genius? I think there's a lot of falsehoods that get peddled to young people that don't help them, because there will be the one person who draws a horse fantastic. I have never met them.
They're out there somewhere.
I've never met them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I've never met a person who just naturally drew a horse fantastic. There is somebody out there, but every person I knew who knew how to draw horses practiced drawing horses. They didn't just bling, you know. So
you know what? Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
You know, I've been talking about this a lot on Coffee Break and other captive audiences I have about the iceberg. And all of my caffeines know about what I'm talking about. The iceberg is I guess, a metaphor for people only seeing the success on the surface and not all of the buildup underneath, which makes everything work, right? And I think even maybe our podcast to a degree has a little bit of that, because people log on to see these superstars like yourself and, you know, Brett and Art and all those people, you know, shoot the shit and talk about their storied careers. And, you know, I think some of our interesting episodes are when people talk about the other things they battle with, right? Or like trying to figure out how you want to make all this work when you have so much pressure, or the millions of missteps it took to get to this place. You know, when we talked to Joe Jusko, and I remember somebody asked, like, well, what do you say when you call them up and ask for this job? He's like, they come to me. And somebody could take that to be arrogant, right? Like, whoa, well, I guess it must be nice. And people come to you like, no, it's 40 years of busting your ass to get to that spot. But I think, you know, maybe if there's any type of like disconnection with our audience and what we're talking about, is that this is shop talk, right? This is a lot of people who put in a lot of time at the job sharing their experiences with people. And I hope it doesn't give anybody the false idea that, you know, this is, you know, I think you know what I'm trying to say. I think,
but, you know, people also give themselves the false idea, right? Mm-hmm. I think, and I can only speak to from my experience as a young person coming up. I would read a magazine or an interview with somebody I admired, Frazetta, Kirby, Neil Adams, whoever. And so you were reading like something in the Comics Journal or whatever. It was not the same as going on YouTube and seeing a zillion videos of somebody doing something, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And okay, well, I think I could do that. You know,
right,
you're just getting the tippity top of the iceberg and something like that, right? Mm-hmm, and so I think that there's a lot, because of the way the world is now, the young artist is faced with a lot of things not being curated or not being structured in a way that maybe you even have the maturity to be able to understand, right? And there is an illusion that it is easy,
right.
But that is you giving yourself that illusion. That's not me giving you that illusion.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm not saying presto changeo. And the other thing you said, I never think of myself as a superstar. I never think of myself as a star.
I know you.
I don't think of myself in that way at all. I just think of myself as an artist trying to achieve the artistic levels that I want, and to be as, hopefully one day, as good as the people that I admire. Mm-hmm. I think for me to think that other way would be like dying in your sleep. I would strangle myself. I would strangle my creativity. I would poison my ego, which then would poison my ability to learn, which would poison my ability to try to achieve my goals. And I may never achieve my goals, but maybe that's part of it. Is you have to keep You have to keep trying.
Yeah.
I think the minute you become an egotist, really, the minute you become an egotist, it's some form of death of your artistic heart. It's really, that's when the cancer sets in,
Mm-hmm.
and it eats some people up. And if it happens to you when you're younger, you can have a couple of great years, and then that could be it. It just consumes you. And you can even be middle-aged and great, and it can go to your head and it can ruin you. I mean, I think to a degree, I said this before, I think it hurt Frazetta. His
Mm-hmm.
ego eventually hurt him. He was so fantastic, but then he thinks he's really, really fantastic, and he's better than all these other people. And his work was never as good after that. As much
Mm-hmm.
as I love his work, as much as he's one of my heroes, I saw that as a real lesson. I think that that's a bad thing. So I think that, bottom line for me is you can achieve this at any age, but let's be honest. Trying to achieve being a professional, full-time artist after the age of 30 becomes increasingly difficult every year. Not impossible, but increasingly difficult,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You deal with younger people, more inexperienced people who are younger than you are going to be your boss and telling you no, right? Can you deal with that? Can your ego tell some punk telling you no?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people can't deal with that. A lot of people couldn't deal with that. You're 45 years old and there's a fresh-faced 20-year-old telling you like,
You're right.
no.
A 22-year-old with a nose ring is telling you you're not getting paid.
I just know this from people I know.
Yeah.
I know this from my own experience in my own life. That said, there are other avenues of success through Kickstarters and things that you might be able to build a career or some success, with your Etsy or what. There's a lot of other paths, but I think you're talking about a very specific thing, like I want to work for Walt Disney, or I want to work for Marvel Comics, or I want to work for such and such game company. There's a certain set of skills that allow you to achieve that goal. You don't get the set of skills, makes it difficult. Also, you have to deal with ageism, because the older you are, you're not going to work for what a 19-year-old will work for. You're not going to. Your life is, if you're 45 years old, you got 3 kids, you need more money than a 19-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think, we kind of talked about this for a second at the beginning of this. We're going to start wrapping it up. I don't want anybody to walk out of this feeling defeated, right? Because we're not really talking about you, whoever you are. It's how you process all of this, right?
But if you were defeated by this, if this talk defeated you, you were already defeated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Lord knows how many doors got shut in my face, or somebody told me I shouldn't be even alive in my late 40s. I could write a book about that. You know what I mean? But if anything, I'm persistent and I'm stubborn, and I know what I want, even if it doesn't make sense to the rest of the world. And that's why I'm here. I love that a lot of our viewers are other comic book artists or illustrators or enthusiasts or high levels muckety mucks of some sort. That's fantastic. And I'm sure you have people around that you influence and that you teach in your own way. And I'm sure you tell them the same stuff, right? This episode wasn't about like kicking anybody's puppy. You know what I mean? It is what it is. It's straight talk. And if, you can log one of these shows and watch us talk to other comic book creators and their lavish studios behind them, that didn't just happen. It's not a backdrop. It's not a Zoom filter. Like, this is all like, work that you've been.
This is dirt and grime.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
This is nothing. This is nothing lavish.
But you understand what I'm saying. It's like it's all work. It's all, like you say, Mike, it's all butt in the chair. That's all it is.
Yep. I mean, I like I said, I just always try to be straight with people, and that is the best form of encouragement. If you just say, "Oh, looks great, kid," blah blah blah, you shine the person on, and it doesn't really look great. Okay, maybe when you're a little kid, that's all you need. You just need that.
Right.
Children need that, right? They don't need the criticism, right? But when you're a teenager and you want to play music or you want to play sports, if you suck, you sit on the bench. No one puts you in the game at the bottom of the fourth where you need to make the 3-point shot because you feel sorry for Billy. Billy needs a win.
Billy can't close.
No. I mean, it's like I said, I think that it's almost like a Hollywood the Hollywood story that's like a lie that then Billy goes in and like 3-point,
Yeah.
No. I mean, I've worked too hard, too long, and I'm no different than anybody else who is doing this or achieve their dream. So I think if you want to achieve this dream, like I said, I think that there's very clear paths that most often lead to having the kind of success. Like I said, I think art gets all this wiggliness that other occupations don't get. Like you can't be wiggly and be a doctor. You kill people. You would literally kill people, right? You don't kill anybody in art. You just kill your career. You kill your dream. Being wiggly and trying to get all, and trying to find every way around the path means you just eventually kill your dream, But if you suck at music, when you sit down to play, it's like, oh, we hear right away that this is a horrible thing. Nobody goes, that ugly sound was the best version of that song I ever heard. Visual arts are unique in this ability to, not necessarily with the public, but within the industry of art education. There's a lot of that. Well, such and such. Well, that my opinion is, blah 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 blah, or learning these rules is just stifling your creativity. All that kind of stuff. No one tells a medical student learning chemistry stifles your ability to heal people. No one tells a musician, learning how to, practicing, that's just stifling your creativity. But in art school, you get that all the time. You get a lot of that old stuff, I'm going to be... What percentage of those people graduate and go on and to be that, the Cy Twombleys of the world is just like almost zero. Almost zero. And in animation, as games, it's like working for a factory. You're going to produce specific type of work in a specific kind of fashion that helps them achieve creating specific kind of content, and you need to do what they need to do, not your own individual weird. It doesn't work like it, because you're also going to be working on a team.
Yeah.
Right? So like any show I worked on, I was part of a team. My board had to gel with the other boards, right? Which had to gel overall with the style of the show. When I was designing characters, it had to gel with the key designer, and all the other designers had to work with the key designer. When I did backgrounds, my backgrounds have to fit with all the style of the show. I can't go in and just say, well, now I'm going to, this is my own thing, my own rule. And so, like I said, I think that there's a lot of falsehoods that come out of the education system that tell people that they can have all this freedom and avoid all these rules and nobody be mean and nobody say a contrary word, and that will lead you to having a great job working for DreamWorks or Disney or Rockstar or whatever. No, that's not how that works. That's not how that works. People eventually find that out when when the dream eventually dies and they have to go do something else. My whole thing is like, why let your dream die? Don't let your dream die. Do this other stuff so you can achieve your dream.
Yeah.
I don't want I want every student I have, every student I meet, every young artist I meet, I want them to have the same dream that I, or better.
Yeah.
Or better. So
Yeah.
all this stuff I'm saying is a way of sort of just trying to say, like, this is a frame of which to try to operate in to try to achieve your stuff. And if me being straight with you causes your blimp to crash, your blimp is going to crash the minute Tweety Bird touched a feather, you know?
Mike Manley, this was fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, that was boot camp.
Boot camp.
You just got boot camped.
Well, yeah. It was rant camp. We have to come up with a new rant camp.
Right. So it wasn't drawing, but it was that Master Chief getting in your face and telling you how things really work. That's boot camp.
Well, it was maybe a philosophical palate cleanser. You know, the way, you know, like I said, I get a lot. I got 2 last week. I was helping people last night. I was drawing over people's work last night. I get it all the time. I'm helping people, getting advice, getting people sending me portfolios. I get this every week, especially this time of year. So I think that these things need to be said. If you're older and you've heard it before, great. But a lot of younger people have never heard it before, or maybe they need to hear it. Like your mama would say, you got to hear it more than once, or you hear what you want to hear.
Mm-hmm. You heard that from Uncle Mike.
Right. You heard what you want to hear, you know. Go ahead.
Now all the comments coming, they were mad quiet this whole episode.
All right.
JRD says the American Idol paradox. I've talked about that. A whole generation raised on the idea that hard work is not necessary to achieve your dreams, just being on TV at the right moment.
There is a lot of that. Again, I think that this particular generation of young artists faces that every day by seeing social media, which like to touch on Jamar's analogy, it's not even the top of the iceberg. It's the tippity top of the iceberg. You don't even know what videos are good. Do you know what videos are good when you look at the video? You know what you like, but do you know there's a difference between what you like and what is good, right? When it comes to learning something, right? Because it goes beyond taste. Taste is one thing, but there's certain things you have to learn that are not about taste. They're about being able to perform. They're about skills that allow you to perform, which is not about whether you like anime. You know, what is not about whether you like Jack Kirby, right? That's taste. But there's other things you have to learn that are about performance, about skill, that will then you can express your taste, you know.
Oh, I love it. Also, EJB, who we haven't seen in a while, what's up, EJB, said to our basketball analogy, to be fair, it's much more likely to throw the ball and accidentally land a 3-point shot than accidentally produce a competent 22-page sequential book. That's real.
Well, that's true, because even a bad comic is a lot of work. A 22-page bad comic is just as much work for that person, maybe actually even more, than somebody who is good, because that person who did 22 pages of really crappy comics probably had to work really hard. Probably had to work harder because they were weak at certain things.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Nobody really thinks about that, but that's a very good point.
Yeah. Also, our boy K-Dub, Kenny Wong, checks in and says, this is a great episode because it covers a very integral element for inspiring artists that is extremely relevant. Thanks, K-Dub. Appreciate that. All right. I'm going to get us out of here, but I enjoyed this. If you've noticed, we try to do a boot camp like every month or like maybe at the end of 5 episodes or something like that with guests. And I was talking to Mike about maybe doing like a boot camp series. If that's something you guys would be interested in, let me know. Kind of my idea was, what if we did a month of boot camps? Just like every Wednesday, we're tackling another subject. Not exactly Mike and I just like shouting at you for 2 hours, but some art tutorial, and Mike goes deep diving in his archives.
Or maybe we could do something where we went from the beginning all the way through to the end, like design, thumbnail, pencil,
right,
ink, whatever,
right. And then by the end of it, we have like a finished page or something like that, or finished.
By the end of it, we have an Eisner.
I like it. Yeah, when Eisners show up, you got to put pencil to pencil up. Put us up on your board. All right, you guys, thanks so much. Appreciate it. I want to give us a sneak peek for our guest for 317. That's St. Patrick's Day. And you know what's the day after St. Patrick's Day, Mike Manley? It's my birthday.
Oh, so will you be green? Will you be so drunk you'll still be green the next day?
Right.
The wearing of the Jamar. The wearing of the Joan.
That's right. I'm black Irish. You got it.
Yeah.
Our guest next week is going to be acclaimed cartoonist Reggie Byers. Reggie Byers is part of the genesis of a lot of cartoonists. Philadelphia native and also like a pioneer in a couple of ways. He had a really early comic, Jam Quacky the Hip Hop Duck, one of the first hip hop comics. Not the first, but it was.
Was that Hammer Time? Was that near Hammer Time?
That was before Hammer Time, I think.
Before Hammer Time?
I think it was before Hammer Time. Okay. Also, his self-publishing wonder. He's also one of the early cartoonists in Philly to be in the comic book scene. He's just a great guy, and I can't wait to get talking with him next week. So please check in for that. Mike Manley, I had a really good time talking to you. I think people got something out of this, even if people were like shaking the table in the middle. At the end, I think they understood where this was coming.
They were shaking, but they were like,
"Oh, place of sharing, right?" And us. That's right. All right, we're gonna get out of here because our connection's really wiki. But thanks so much. You know what happens next, guys. We'll see you next week, and don't forget to wash those curvy hands. I love it. Good job.